Hello everybody, I'm here with Kerbal Space Program 1.2. Well, not quite, it's a pre-release of 1.2, but it's still something. So, I finished didn't really finish, I stopped doing my Planet Quest because of some updates with the 1.2 game. And, so I figured, keep playing Kerbal Space Program, it's a lot of fun. I think people like watching it as well. And instead of trying to go to all the planets, let's do some different challenges. So one thing that I want to try for this episode, I guess you could call it, is, or maybe even the next few episodes, is try to get into space and back down for as cheap as possible. And that means getting some sort of really, really cheap capsule. And I mean cheap, we're talking about like a seat, an external command seat. That means no Kerbal is inside any capsules. And getting that into space and then getting that Kerbal back down without burning up, that could be a lot of fun. So I guess the best thing to do is start with some sort of structural something. Yeah, I was in the wrong building when I recorded that first bit. So now we're in the right building. This is the building for building spaceships and not space planes. Two very different things. Anyway, I'm going to put a little probe body, or probe core on there. In fact, actually, hold on. Use the probe core as the core of the ship. And this is going to be the bit that the Kerbal is going to be controlling and everything. So here's his little seat that he's going to be flying from. Get that as centered as I can. And then further center it using this fun little tool. There we go. That is centered. Okay. And then a heat shield. And this should be enough to keep... Oh, they changed the tabs around, which is a little bit annoying. So add the heat shield, and that should be enough to keep Kerbal safe on re-entry. In fact, actually, I should rotate this around like that and move it up so that the Kerbal isn't inside the space probe. Move it like that. Okay, there we go. That's better. And we also need a parachute of some sort. Parachute. Where are you? Aerodynamics? Nope. Utility. Yeah, there we go. Like I say, they moved things around, and so it's not quite as easy to figure stuff out anymore. So we'll put in a drogue chute there, and then we'll put in our actual chute here. Yeah, that won't cause any problems. Ever. Let's move these around a little bit. So put this guy there and sink it in a little bit, maybe? Yeah, that won't work. It needs to be behind the heat shield. The drogue chute, this is going to make things very unbalanced for re-entry. So move it over here and there. Alternatively, actually, probably be better if we did something like this. There we go. And move the big one down here. Yeah, there we go. That way, that seems a little bit more balanced. That seems better. Because what will happen is most of the mass will be down here toward the feet of the Kerbal, so that it'd be easier to control this as almost like a wing as it's re-entering the atmosphere. And that's actually very accurate for space travel. When they design these ships, the engineers like to design the capsules in such a way that they're heavier on one side so that the capsule acts as a wing and they can kind of glide a little bit toward a safer landing point than just randomly re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. Okay, we need to add a little something for re-entering. Let's see. Just a little engine is really all we need. for re-entry. I don't need to overkill, because the bigger the fuel tank, the heavier it is, and the more it costs and all that stuff. Not that I need to worry about cost or anything. Actually, let's go with a smaller tank. Let's go with the Oscar B tank, and add a little itty bitty engine to that. There we go. That will get the Kerbal out of orbit. Okay, we need a little capsule for him to come out of, because Kerbals can't actually be assigned to these before launch. They have to be put in by little capsule. So let's get our capsule assigned. Again, a coupler. There we go. Little decoupler, and our capsule. Let's put in the lander can. That should be fine. And fill it up. There you go, Jebediah. And this doesn't have any like launch vehicle or anything, and I'm not worried about that right now. I'm just going to put this into orbit and see if the Kerbal survives re-entry. So that'll be fun. So super light lander. We'll save that. Actually, we should probably save it as experiment 1, because it will probably fail. Alright, let's launch this. And in this cheat menu, they have a whole bunch of new features. One where I can just cheat a ship into orbit, which is a lot of fun. It makes things really easy for testing and stuff like that. So let's use the cheat menu. Cheats, set orbit, and yeah, that looks good. Boom. We're at 86 kilometers above the surface, about 87 actually. We'll have him EVA and get into his command chair. This is a little bit hard to control actually. Right click board. There we go. And decouple away from that. Point toward retrograde. Oh, he doesn't have any control. Does this have vectoring? Okay, yeah, it has a gimbal, so it can vector. So we'll have to use the engine to steer, which is a little bit annoying, but that's okay. We can add steering capabilities later to the actual ship. So we'll start our descent like that, and wait until our periapsis gets low enough. It's good. That's good. We should land, yeah, relatively on the day side. Okay, now we can get rid of all this extra gunk, and now it's just this little capsule, or not capsule, this little heat shield with a Kerbal on it and no way to control anything. Let's see if he survives. So we'll just skip time forward. His headlights are still on. Let's turn those off. Or not his headlights, his helmet lights. Yeah, so the helmets in real life in space are a lot of very interesting. They used to use like a shampoo almost to keep the inside of the helmet, the glass from fogging up and all kinds of things happening that would ruin the astronaut's ability to see. But they changed that when one astronaut got some shampoo in his eye, some like soap in his eye, and it was a serious problem. He was outside of the capsule, and he was tethered to the ship, but even still, it's very dangerous if you can't see in space and you're blinded by soap in your eyes that you cannot get your hands to kind of relieve the pain and the pressure a little bit. You're in a lot of trouble. Or you can be, rather. And so this astronaut got soap in his eyes from his helmet, or from his visor, and so NASA decided that they needed to re-examine the way that they keep the visors see-through and all that stuff. Now they use a different shampoo. I believe it's specifically the No Tears, like Johnson & Johnson shampoo. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's actually what they use now. So it's not perfect, but they're doing something better. I would imagine that they could use some sort of chemical treating on the inside to make things better, but that might become more costly, and they've got to keep costs down wherever they can, even if it means using Johnson & Johnson on the inside of their visor. Anyway, this Kerbal, he's getting a lot of heating effects. That heat bar tells us that he's pretty close to burning up, but we're slowing down pretty well as well. We're now traveling at about 1,600 meters per second. That went down significantly when we went from orbit to surface. We're closing in on 1 kilometer per second, slowing down pretty well. His heat bar is going down. It looks like he's going to be able to survive re-entry heating. Yeah, look at that. So this capsule is actually perfect. This is enough for our super duper cheap re-entry capsule. We don't need to put on any batteries because we're not controlling direction or anything. Let's deploy the rogue chute. Uh-oh. I guess we're too high. That's what's going on. There we go. There's the drogue chute. And then we'll deploy the real chute. And I'm not going to go through the entire landing. Obviously, this is going to work. So I can cut the recording here. If something exciting happens, we'll come back. Okay, we're about to land. Nothing super exciting has happened yet. We're falling at around 4 meters per second, which is like 8 miles per hour. And he's going to land on his head like that. So, I mean, there goes his neck and his ability to move ever again. But since this is a video game simulation, he's fine. So we won't worry about it too much. Yeah, so this capsule is a success. We don't need to change it at all. So now I can worry about getting into space and doing orbital maneuvers and everything else for as cheaply as possible. You'll also notice that if we get boarded again, so board that again, then we can look at the ablator. We only used a very small portion of the ablator on that. Now the ablator adds mass and cost, and again we want to keep the cost down as much as possible. So two things that we can remove. We can remove a large portion of the ablator, and then we can remove the drogue chute, because this really was not necessary. The heat shield was slowing us down sufficiently. We didn't need a drogue chute at all. So I'll make those changes. Okay, here we are back with the lander, and so I've removed the drogue chute. I've moved the large chute up so that when this deploys, he's not landing on his head. Just a little safety precaution to keep my Kerbal safe. That kind of thing. I brought down the ablator down to 40 out of 200 units. It's still enough that we can re-enter the atmosphere at high speeds, but not so much that it's really heavy and costing a lot of money. At any rate, so now we need to figure out how we're going to get this into space, aside from using the cheat menu. Okay, Jebediah Carmen is in the capsule. He's ready to come out, and then immediately board. I love that. It's too funny. And we'll jettison the capsule, watch it explode. Nope, never mind. No explosions today. Alright, and we want to control... controlling from there is fine, actually. Let's throttle to a good point. This is a very powerful engine, so a low throttle will be just fine, I think. And let's do liftoff. There we go. So this is a really powerful vectoring engine. It's not super fuel efficient, but it should get us into orbit, I hope. This engine is actually designed specifically for putting on the backs of space planes, like the what were they called? I don't even remember. Okay, things are not working out the way that I want them to. Hold on. No. Control from here. All right. That should... There we go. So he was like controlling it wrong and flying backward and all that annoying stuff. Anyway, I'm trying to do an early gravity turn so that we'll be spending more time in the atmosphere because of it, but at the same time, it'll make it easier to get into orbit once we're in space. And we're not accelerating too fast. We're already halfway down on our fuel. This is looking pretty bad. I don't think he's going to make it into orbit on this. So let's go to full thrust. Oh, yep. Bad things are happening. So, obviously this is not going to work. Oh, sad. Okay. Alright, EVA, get on to that. Look at how much this is swaying. Yeah, I would I would definitely trust this ship with my life. Look at that guy. Oh man. Oh, that is scary. And then the explosions. Oh boy. Okay, well, so we also learned a lesson. We don't want to control from the seat, but we want to instead control from the little probe body, or probe core. So there we go, controlling from the probe core. And let's lift off. We're gonna need a little bit more thrust because we're a lot heavier now. But looks like we're doing just fine. Let's see what a full thrust looks like. And we can bring down the speed, you know, if we need to, before he starts burning up. Oh man, could you imagine being launched into space on this thing? A little chair, just strapped to the top of a rocket. There's nothing that could possibly go wrong. Not at all. Anyway, I'm going to speed through this launch because it can get boring. Unless something very interesting happens, we'll just speed through. Okay, yeah. So these winglets aren't quite doing enough. So this engine is what's doing most of our stability control, which is a bit troubling because the faster we go using this engine, the more likely that in the atmosphere the Jebediah Kerman is just going to burn up, and that's no fun. But I think we're getting so far out of the atmosphere that we're not too worried about that. Oh, hold on. He's burning up real bad now. Yes, we're really up there to the point that the atmospheric pressure isn't causing the ship to flip anymore. In fact, we're about to reach space right now. We're in space. Okay. That means we can now thrust as much as we want with all 2 drops of fuel that were remaining. Okay, get rid of that guy. And let's figure out orbit. Yeah. So this, we should have enough fuel to get into orbit just fine. There we go. Hit that maneuver node. We'll warp up to the maneuver node. It shouldn't take too long to make it happen. Okay, let's fire up the engine. Again, we're going to have to use the engine for controlling our vectoring, and we are in orbit. Look at that, with very little fuel remaining. Okay, new me here. So we got into orbit. Everything's cool. Super cheap budget ship. That was the challenge of the day. And yeah, now I just do a lot of random talking. It's kind of annoying, actually. And prove that I can land the capsule again from an legitimately attained orbit. At any rate, I would love to see your comments below on challenges that I can do later on. It would be a lot of fun to see if you guys want me to I don't know, go to the moon for as cheap as possible, or see if we can, get the biggest explosion in space, or whatever challenge that you come up with. I'd love to see your comments in the space below. Anyway, until then, I'm Conan Horace. Have fun.